What's up, folks? Let's talk Kinetic Fusillade. Something, however you say it in your language. This skill has been a blast to play. It is absolutely ripping through maps. So much fun with the clear, with the heralds, with the pops. Very fun feeling there. The defense side of things is going up and up and up as we get more and more ES, and we also have single target coming in now that I have spent the last day and a half doing math, making spreadsheets, counting frames, and just overall having an absolute nightmare trying to figure out how this skill exactly functions. And even at this point, I'm not entirely convinced I am correct, and I would love for someone to tell me I'm wrong, because then they could show me that I'm right or wrong, and then I don't have to do this math, and I don't have to do this frame counting because we don't have a target dummy. But yeah, anyway, let's get into the whole shebang of it. Yeah, heralds with herald stacking and herald of the hive and all that stuff going on makes the screen just a colorful nightmare of fireworks as you kill things. The single target, as far as in these clips, is pretty decent, and this is without having my actual optimal setup that I have now. So these are just like normal shaper kills and stuff like that from ahead of time, and overall it's just ramping up very, very nicely with a lot more to go, a lot more upgrades I can get. I don't have Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh in here yet. I don't have some of the better setups for my implicits on my gear, and I can always, of course, get in more projectiles and stuff of that nature to really ramp it up, along with maybe changing out some belts and other pieces of gear. So a lot more to go there, and it's still doing pretty fairly well. I haven't taken it into like T17s yet and all of that content because I just finished off my Avoid Elements setup, and so now I may be able to go into more of that stuff, but I want to get a couple more levels before I do that, because, you know, that kind of stuff can make you go down in the XPs pretty rapidly. But the main thing is, we gotta start talking about how this works and things that I have learned over the last couple days. So let's get into that. I'm currently on a 94 character with crazy style there, Fusillade, and we have a setup with dusk rings and warp time pieces. And we also, you know, I was originally running, you know, the time clasp, and I was running that amulet, and then I had this weapon. We'll get into all of this stuff as to why it matters and what it means for you. And let's start by just going through the beginning of the giant elephant in the room, which is that I made a spreadsheet. I needed a spreadsheet to figure out how the skill works, because of the timings of attacks and such. I needed to make sure that I was able to get the modifier duration correct to the projectile amount that I'm spawning, to the attack speed that I'm spawning, to be able to make sure that I don't cut off any projectiles while attacking with this skill. I know, math is scary and terrifying, but sometimes it's kind of fun. So, how this works is very straightforward. You go into Path of Building, you look at your duration mod, in my case a 0.1053. You then put that into here, and then you look at the number of projectiles you're firing. The number of projectiles I'm firing is currently 10. You put that into there. 12 is just most people's things. This is only here in case somebody wants to go ashes, which I was originally thinking about. Maybe there is a play with that, but I'm not going to worry about that just yet. So that gives you an average multiplier per projectile if you fire the entire sequence of 54, which is pretty good. The total attack duration of your attack pattern is 0.17901. So you need an attack speed that is slightly higher than that as the attack duration. I originally thought it had to do with server ticks in terms of waiting for the last one, but the more I tested it today, the more I tried to like go frame by frame, counting projectiles in the recorded footage I have. I was able to see that it is probably based off of a second duration of the launch time that is also the same duration as the spawn time, just the other way around. And it wasn't a server tick thing. So that gives you an average of 55.86 projectiles a second on my setup as it currently sits. So then the question is, what do you need to make this all happen? And the big thing there is I am not running the Impossible Escape down here because it's way too expensive. I kind of figured it was going to be if people were going to go into this build, and the moment Neversink made his video for that thing shot up to the moon. So I am not that variant. I'm just traveling down there the old-fashioned by the long road way, and I tried to make use of that by just putting in a natural instincts here and then getting some stuff here. I was going to grab a light of meeting, but it turns out like really good abyssal eyes like this one for 50C are actually about the same as light of meeting. So instead of spending you know, 15 divine on a physical light of meaning, I'm probably just going to slap some abyssal sockets in there and call it a day. And you'll notice because of this mathematical stuff, I don't have some of the attack speed nodes allocated, and that's on purpose. So this node is not allocated because it would give me too much attack speed. I'm not running the attack speed golem because it would give me too much attack speed. I can't go to these nodes because it would give me too much attack speed. Same thing with these. Attack speed and accuracy nodes can't be picked up because I would attack too fast. I know it's bonkers as anything that the skill works like this, but this is where we're at right now. And that's a result of just doing all of that math and what this section of the little graph thing here is. So basically, depending on what setup you're going for, whether you're using a time class or whether you're using a dusk ring, you're going to have different versions of where you put your allocation of duration things. The baseline for all of this calculation is my setup right now, which is the less duration mastery that's on the bottom of the Scion. I have the graft for +1 supports on the tree here, so +1 level of socketed support gems, and I have a 2023, but you need at least a 2022 of a less duration. You don't need a 2120 or a 2123. I mean, you can get one of those if you want to corrupt a bunch of them, and then you'll save yourself a graft. That's fine. But a 2022 gives you enough breakpoints to get to the math that I'm at right now. If you don't have the same setup on the baseline, you might have to do different math, but that's completely okay. It's not that difficult to do. The other thing is, it does actually require, for me, an exact 20 reduced skill effect duration warp timepiece to be able to wear a dusk coil. If you don't have exactly those setups, the breakpoints that I'm using there are not going to work. Time class is what I was using for the most part to begin with because it has a 20 reduced skill effect duration, which is better for making the math a lot easier to do. But if you want to switch the time class out for a dusk coil, you're going to have to make sure that all of these things line up. And that is kind of a nightmarish part in some ways, but once you get your head around what it's going for, you're perfectly fine with that. So the way the overall reduction of things works is you have less duration, 2022. You have warp timepiece for 20 skill effect duration. If you have less, you're going to need less attack speed because you're going to be at a different breakpoint. You're going to want a dusk ring or a time clasp, and you're going to want a hasty demise anoint, or if you don't go for hasty, you're going to be using the multi-shot anoint, because that, depending on what breakpoint you're hitting for, what speed your weapon is at, depends entirely on which one of these anoints you're going to be using, and you're going to be traveling down here to grab all of this stuff off by hand and not using the impossible escape. If you use the impossible escape, you lose the mastery. That means your math is going to change, and you're going to have to do your math again, just judging from this duration modifier here, with the projectile count modifier there, and then basing it on your attack speed being slower than the number that the calculator spits out. And these are just some examples there, but overall this number here should be smaller than your number here, and as long as it is, you should be perfectly fine to fire off all of the projectiles you have in the build as you wish throughout the thing, and you can just hold the button down and it will do damage. I know it's very weird, but this is just how the skill works, and it took a lot of just counting to figure that out. It's one of the reasons I'm running these golems and not attack speed golems, yada yada, you get the idea. Now let's talk about how I actually scale this setup, because that's a whole different bag of things, and the first thing we gotta talk about is links. I was originally very skeptical about Sacred Wisp working because there was no visual indicator that they do anything, and yesterday when I was testing it, I could not visibly show that they were actually capable of doing something within the build. Today, however, I am sort of able to see that there is a DPS difference between running Sacred Wisp and elemental weapon damage with attacks, so I think they are working. Once you get to a certain point, the percentages is just enough to showcase that it's there, so I think Sacred Wisp is safe to run in the build. It just doesn't seem to like visually do anything, but I think it is actually doing something overall in the build. So it is a link worth having in the setup. Other than that, we are using Great Varley and GMP at the same time, because once again, that multiple projectile modifier that comes from the skill itself for those projectiles that deal previous in the sequence, they deal more damage as a result. So when you can fire all of them off at once, of course that is what you want to do. So you can fire them all off, you do more damage, you do all of that good stuff there. So that's why we're using both of those. Less duration once again to get to those breakpoints. And for me, I'm in a Trinity setup. And the reason I'm in a Trinity setup is because I'm running a lot of Heralds. So I've got Herald of Purity, Herald of Ice, Herald of Ash, Herald of Thunder, and the fancy one that I turned off while I was recording because it makes pulsing noises is the Herald of the Hive. This is a Herald that comes from the Lost Unity Ring. It's a level 30 Herald of the Hive, and what it does is whenever you apply an ailment to an enemy, you get a stack of otherworldly pressure, that's a fun word to say, which then makes that pulse around you go quicker. Now, for me, I'm not really using the pulse itself to do any damage. I'm sure it's doing something a little bit in the background, and it's got some decent numbers there. The big thing for me is the last line of that thing. The buff grants 3% more damage per Herald skill affecting you. So in my case, it is a Herald, and along with the other 4 Heralds, I have 5 Heralds, each one of them giving me 3% more damage per Herald skill affecting you. But it is a buff granting ability of the Herald, meaning it can be scaled as far as we are aware, which means we can do things like go Elementalist and get ourselves the Bringer of Ruin node for Herald effect. We can grab these nodes here for more Herald effect. We can run things like Empowered Envoys for more Herald effect, along with Empowered Envoys for more Herald effect. So we get all that Herald effect going, along with the fact that I have the ability to go Lycia for Farewell to Flesh, which will then make it do even more. Even though it's not reserving a lot, there are breakpoints once again that you can hit with the skill. Right now, my Herald of the Hive is giving me 7% more damage per Herald skill affecting you, so it's 5 times 7, 35. If I get to the next breakpoint by getting this nodes in, once I get a Flame and Flesh in here, then I will be at about 9, and then if I get a couple tattoos for Herald buff effect, I'll be at 10. So that'll be a grand total of 50% more damage because I have 5 Heralds on me, alongside of the fact that I'm buffing the other Heralds that I'm also running. So Purity, Ice, Ash, and Thunder, they'll all get buffed by me doing that buff effect stuff as well, so I get more effect from my Heralds in general, and that is the reason we run a Fizz weapon on the setup as well. Weapons and most gear this league are extremely cheap to get overall. I bought this one for 3 Divine. Yes, for some reason you can get a 500 Fizz DPS wand for 3 Divine. That's just the world we live in this current state of the league, with the tree doing the printing it's doing. This chest piece with 1000 energy shield, 1 tier 2 intelligence, 2 resistances was 30C. My gloves, I just had to roll myself because I wanted conversion gloves to convert all that fire that I have. I'm still not fully converted. I'd like to get that a little bit higher, so try to get the 25 to a 30, or, you know, get the last divine on there, but depending on which way is cheaper, who knows. I've just kind of left it there for now. So the reason for that is I want fire and lightning to be pretty equal to each other, because I do run Trinity. I need some way to trigger that, so Trinity is in there for that reason. Along with the fact that the only way to really make this was I grabbed Veiled Chaos Orbs and just clicked on this until I got Convert to Fire as a modifier on a Fractured Energy Shield and some other stuff on it as well. And that's what I got. That's the glove I'm sticking with for now. Boots, kind of the same theory. Buy yourself a Fractured 35C movement speed Warlock boots for 5C, and then click on it with Essence of Loathing until you get something that resembles a decent okay-ish boot. In this case, I got that, which isn't fantastic, but hey, it's something. And if I need to get better boots, I can always get better boots later on. Very simple, straightforward stuff. Fractures are extremely cheap. Helmet, same thing. Reservation efficiency. Clicking with essences until you get the energy shield and the energy shield, or whatever you're looking for. I got a pretty good one here with the energy shield and T1, and then I was able to put +1 sockets on there, so the couple heralds that are in there get some levels to them. Why not? That's nice for me. I don't hate it. Mana reservation efficiency does seem like it would be counterintuitive to go with Lycia, but the reality is I'm just going for certain breakpoints, and I can kind of get by with the Herald buff stuff there. I still need to be able to fit in things like Discipline and a level 1 Precision just to get a little bit more stuff going, maybe level 1 Clarity if I had more mana issues, which I kind of do in some regards. So that's the reason I'm going Reservation Efficiency. Implicits there, reduced attack, reservation efficiency. Here, buff of golems, very good. Fizz taking hits as chaos, gives me a bit of fizz mitigation, you'll love to see it. Here, Rage on hit or Intimidate both work. I went Rage. It takes a little bit longer to ramp, but why not? It's not bad. If you wanted to ramp up even quicker, you could go for 2 Rage, but then that's going to cost you a lot of orb conflicts because you also need the fire damage taken to be high enough, and that could be an absolute nightmare, so I'm not going to bother with any of that stuff. That sounds like way too much effort for me in terms of the cost of the build. Right now, I would say everything combined, even the fact that I have the Unnatural Instincts, I've spent about 20 Divine on the build, and that's about all I've spent on it. Prices of stuff is all over the place. Warp time pieces, things like that nature, especially the 20% reduced ones, are very high because other people are also doing the setup. I bought mine for 60C. I don't know what they cost now because things move really rapidly, so when this video comes out, who knows what the price of that stuff is. But the rest of the stuff is fairly cheap. This shield with a very nice energy shield, big spell damage, was very hard to find. Spell damage does work for the skill. Kinetic Fusillade increases and reductions to spell damage, also applied to attack damage at 100%, 150% value. Very good to have spell damage on the shield with an avoid elements, and I could craft on the resist I needed. This one was 3 divine, so it's one of the more expensive pieces because they were just really hard to find high spell damage modifiers with also avoid elements on there as well. But you don't need to do avoid elements there, avoid elements here, and all that stuff. You can also just do shock avoidance boots and get a storm shroud. Those cost about 3 divine right now as well, if I'm not mistaken. Lost Unity, the ring I am wearing, is now 140C. It was way more expensive originally, so don't worry about that if that is something you were freaking out about. I bought mine for 130. They spiked up because I think Balor made a video, and all of a sudden there was a very small amount of market on them. Now they have a lot of market, a lot more market. They're back down to their lower prices. I'm using a Primordial Bond that is renewal and Primordial Bond and renewal for that golem buff effect, and then having a little bit more regeneration for my golems. These are down to 100C. I bought mine for a bit more than that. Flesh and Flames are kind of all over the place at the moment, so that's going to be the next upgrade for me. As you can tell, some of the blue ones are extremely expensive. Mastermind Discord being the cheapest at the moment seems to be the case. But on the flame side of things, you know, these are down to like 2 divines because a lot more people are running the Exarch side of things. So about 7 divines if you want to go for the Flesh and Flame setup. Wed, I was going to originally run, but Sacred Wisp seemed to be stronger, so I'm not going to worry about that anymore. As far as the wands are something you're going to have to kind of like look at what you're doing. Like I said, you want some crit on there. You want the attack speed that works with the breakpoint you're at, so just press this copy button over here on the right hand side, put it in pub, and see that your attack speed is where you think it needs to be. I bought one with just high physical and then multi-modded the suffixes as I saw fit. Just remove the suffixes and multi-modded around it, because that lets me kind of modify the attack speed to where I want it to be, and so I did it that way to begin with. There's a couple options there as well, but you got to make sure that, you know, when you're looking for these, look for good rolls. My base, the one I have that ended up being about 500 DPS, it was about 120C, but you can look and see what's available. It's not too bad, all sorts of stuff there. One of the bigger upgrades, if you want to get it when you're later on into the build, is of course going to be Awakened GMP, but it's 17 divines. That's the entire cost of the build, so chances are good I'm not going to be going for that route myself. Unnatural Instincts is changing all the time, so this is now going towards the 5 divine value. I bought mine for 4. Once again, it's really late game mod thing that you want to put in the build. You don't need to have it in the beginning, but it does give more value to having to travel down all the way to the bottom of the tree, like I've done here, because you get all this spell damage here, you get the accuracy here, you get some movement speed stuff there. It's not too bad, and I was going to put the Light of Meeting there, but the problem is that right now it does seem like, for me, as far as some of the stuff in the build, of course, I need to modify a bunch of stuff and see if that is the case, but a lot of these jewels that are like these big searching eyeball jewels with fizz, cold, crit, cold, stuff like this for wands, they're a lot more value, but, you know, 2 divine starts getting into the category of not really worth it. But then you go into like down one tier down, and you have these for like 10C, and you can put 2 of these in your build rather than worrying about getting a Light of Meeting. So pretty good value there as well. The big Watcher's Eye I have right now is just a simple discipline gain energy shield by hits. It just gives me a little bit more healing. Of course, a double would be very nice with precision or clarity if you want to get something like that, but those of course cost a whole lot more. But the market of these is getting saturated over time, so maybe they'll come down. Just want the discipline for that healing effect of it. I do have leech coming in from the wand nodes that I currently possess, but having an extra layer on top of that doesn't exactly hurt, so that's why I ended up going that route. As for how I ended up leveling the build, I've been all over this tree from going, you know, going this way and down. I've been over here, I've been everything, so I can't really say what the best way to level it is, but honestly, going through the spell damage and just grabbing some life nodes and shooting up through this way, probably one of the easier ways to do it. Just go through, get the wand nodes. The skill through the campaign is very nice. It feels very good to play. It feels very smooth to do, so I wouldn't worry about too much on that regard, because you're gonna have a pretty good time in terms of what you're going through with the campaign, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. Zeo, I'm going all the way over here now because I wanted the regen, because the hive stuff exploding in the beginning was very annoying and I didn't have a way to deal with it, so I wanted some of that regen back to my build. And that also let me get the last of my avoidant elements here. On these nodes, I had to drop these nodes for it, but because my shield has enough energy shield, I didn't lose that much ES. These could be my last nodes if I end up getting much higher level than I normally expect to, but this build I've currently kind of estimated to get level 96 on, because that gets me the sockets here, and then if I want to push even further beyond, of course I can grab that. I'm almost at 10,000 energy shield with that. However, there is the option to also go into dropping probably some of this area here and going out this way and going up, in which case you would be able to get yourself maybe some spell suppression, stuff like that, with the hybrid gear like you do on a trickster. Get ghost dance, all of those things into the build. That could also work really well. I'm not really fussed about it right now because I do feel like I have a decent max hit as it is. I am not immortal by any stretch of the imagination, but I do feel pretty comfortable overall in terms of what I'm doing, what content I'm doing, and what I need to kind of have the build do, so it's not too bad as a result of that. And the damage right now is 5.8 mil or so, you know, in general there, but Flame and Flesh and all the other stuff that goes into it is going to change that a lot, because this number here is going to change. I've put this in the custom configuration for the pub. Herald of Hive isn't supported yet inside Path of Building, and the multiple projectiles having the average come from that calculator. I've put these both in here, so if I were to get that Lycia effect in, get more of that stuff going, you know, get this node here, pushes me up to 6.7 because I have a Flesh and Flame in the build now, and then to get the Herald buff stuff going, takes that up to there, so now we're at 7.5 million, and you get the point. Things are going to start going up a lot more if I can get, you know, the pieces I need to flush out the rest of it. Put in another searching eyeball if I can find another better one, put in these two, maybe switch out some stuff. All sorts of stuff there that can happen. Like I said, if you don't want to run Rage because you don't want the ramp, you can always take that off and instead run Intimidate on the gloves. It's still 4.9, so it's more consistent DPS, but a little bit off of there as well, so it depends on how you want to run that setup. And then the flask here for diamond, I need to switch this out to a critical charge one so that it's always up, so I get the crit from that, and we have a pretty decent crit chance as well. My biggest problem right now is hit chance, so probably what I will do is I will change out some of these jewels to be accuracy related. This one already is, but maybe the other one has to be accuracy related as well, because I can't pick up the nodes that actually give me accuracy. It's kind of a weird side problem for the build, where you want accuracy but you can't pick it up there, and you're out of wand passives to pick up accuracy here, so you're kind of in this odd position to do that with. You could always not run this node and save yourself a point as well there. Yeah, there's a whole lot of different modifiers as to what you want to do, how you want to build it, what you can tweak on the setup, but overall the setup is working really well. Depending on if you want to go hasty and multi, that also makes your pathing different. If you want to go this way, you can then just pick up multi-shot here on the way through, going for the suppress stuff, and maybe that gives you more damage overall because you could drop some of this stuff, but then you lose this, so you need some way to get power charges because you're not going to be able to travel that far this way. You get it. There's a lot to it, but overall the way that I've built it right now feels pretty feasible to replicate. It feels pretty feasible to do a second time. The gearing cost is not astronomical at the moment. The problem right now, of course, is with the warp timepiece. That's cost has just gone really high up as a result of people needing them. I would just say not going for the 20% is fine, so you're just going to be on a slower breakpoint as far as this is concerned. So whatever you want to do here, plug in your numbers for the duration, plug in your modifiers for projectiles, and see what attack speed you have to be at, because you're going to need to figure that out if you don't want to lose projectiles on the fly. So remember, you need slower attack speed than this number here says. So in my case, this has 0.179 and I have a 0.18 attack speed. So I get all my projectile firing and I can just do the old rapid fire Gatling gun as it is in Path of Exile 2. I can now do it in Path of Exile 1. Hopefully that explains as much as I can explain. If you have any further questions, please put them in the comments. I am by no means 100% sure that I've explained everything correctly, and there's probably a bunch of stuff that I missed. So if you need further clarification, do ask away either in the comments below on social media, or just come to the stream, and I'm more than happy to help anybody understand any portion of this. I think I have it somewhat correct and I understand what I'm talking about, but at the same time, I could be completely wrong, and I do not mind being wrong, because then people can tell me that I'm being wrong about this. One last thing, I'm using Preserving Stillness as my graft. I forgot these arm things existed. This gives me just a little buffer because I have on Heraldry, which gives me a exposure at all times around me. So this gives me a little buffer from that. And then I'm also using Call of the Pyre, which basically whenever I attack, I put Ash on things, which is very nice when you are 50% fire damage. It gives you a nice boost. So these two are very good. And the big thing there is the increased graft blood gained is very handy for getting enough graft blood to actually utilize the tree consistently. So that is something you want to look into and keep an eye out for if you need to get more graft blood. Those are very good. I have 2 of those in the build. Very nice indeed, along with additional damage reductions from Preserving Stillness. I probably want a better one of this if I could get it, so maybe I end up upgrading that at some point, but very nice little place there. And then these come with attack damage as well as elemental damage with attacks on them as well, so if you want to get one that has both of those, it's very good, and it adds a little bit of stuff to the build, so you get that like weird fire vortex thing going on. Very nice. Overall, this build is really, really fun. It is a mess on the screen. It is a mess to play with, but it is overall a very enjoyable experience. And I do highly recommend checking it out, even if you have to wrap your head around some mathematical good times. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Y'all have yourself a good one. I will be back. If I make a fully endgame version of this, I'll give an update on how the DPS turns out and how it does in T17s. Sound good? Peace.